She stood barefoot in the frost, her shawl soaked in blood, clutching a sack that twitched as if something inside was still alive. Her voice trembled like broken glass as she looked into the eyes of the silent rancher and whispered, "Please take them off." He had buried his past in silence, choosing loneliness over pain. But what he found inside that sack shattered everything he thought he knew about life, death, and the thin, fragile line between good and evil. What was inside wasn't just heartbreaking, it was a truth so dark, so unexplainable. It would pull him into a storm of secrets, sacrifice, and something not entirely human. This isn't just a story about rescue, it's about redemption, terror, and a chilling secret that waited years to be revealed. Stay with me, because what happens next will stay with you forever. The rancher's name was Cole Braddock, a man known in the rugged hills of Montana for his silence, strength, and the kind of sorrow that lived in the shadows of his eyes. He had buried his wife 3 winters ago, and since then, had chosen the company of land, cattle, and endless sky over people. On the outskirts of Bitter Ridge, his ranch stood quiet, distant from town, guarded by weathered fences and ghosted memories. But one icy morning in late October, that silence was shattered when Cole heard something he hadn't heard in years, the desperate cry of a woman just beyond his fence line. He froze on his porch, coffee cup in hand, steam rising into the chill as the sound echoed again. Hoarse, trembling, almost pleading. He set the mug down slowly, grabbed his rifle as habit, and made his way to the barn, following the voice. Behind the barn, near the gravel path that curved into the woods, he saw her, a young woman, barely in her 20s, covered in a torn shawl, standing barefoot in the frost with blood on her hands and fear etched across her face. In front of her was a large burlap sack, tied tightly with rope, motionless, but not empty. The sack shifted once, like something inside had moved. Cole's grip on the rifle tightened. The girl looked up at him, eyes wild and glassy, and with a voice so cracked it barely sounded human, she said, "Please take them off." Cole approached slowly, every step louder than the wind. He kept his eyes on her, but his mind was screaming with questions. Who was she? Why was she here? And what was in that sack? When he reached her, he knelt beside the bundle. It was heavy. He touched the knot, wet with something dark, and looked at the girl. "What's in here?" he asked, not expecting a straight answer. She just stared. Her lips trembled before whispering, "You have to take them off." "I couldn't. I just couldn't do it." Her words struck something deep in Cole, something buried. He remembered his wife, her hands shaking in the final days, saying things that made no sense until they did. He knew the look of a soul breaking under weight it couldn't carry. This girl wore that same look. Cole took his knife from his belt and sliced through the rope. The sack slackened. He pulled it open with one hand, his heart pacing faster than it had in months. What he saw made his breath hitch. Inside were 2 small children, twins, barely 2 years old. Their faces were pale, their clothes soaked in blood, but they were alive. One whimpered, the other blinked slowly, eyes unfocused. Cole dropped the sack and stared at the girl. "What happened?" he growled, voice low and dangerous. The girl fell to her knees, sobbing now, her arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold in whatever truth was about to spill out. "I didn't know what else to do," she cried. "They weren't mine. I found them, out there in the woods beside a man. He was already dead, and they were covered in his blood." Cole's pulse thundered in his ears. He looked at the children again, now curled together like puppies, their tiny bodies trembling. Something inside him cracked, something he thought had died with his wife. Without thinking, he wrapped them both in his jacket and scooped them into his arms. "We're going inside," he said sharply. The girl hesitated, eyes darting back toward the forest, as if something still hunted her. Cole noticed and didn't like it. "Are you in danger?" he asked. She nodded slowly. I think someone followed me." Inside the cabin, the warmth of the fire and the smell of pine did little to ease the tension. Cole laid the children down on the couch, checking their limbs, their faces. Bruises, small cuts, but they were alive. The girl stood awkwardly by the door, trembling. Cole handed her a blanket. You're staying here tonight. You and those kids. I'll take first watch. She looked up, startled. Why are you helping me? Cole didn't have a clear answer. Maybe it was because he'd once stood helpless by a hospital bed while his wife faded away. Maybe it was because these kids had no one. Or maybe, just maybe, some quiet part of his soul had been waiting for this moment, to feel needed again. As night fell, the wind howled against the windows. The girl finally spoke. Her name was Rhea. She'd been hitchhiking through the state when she came across a campsite deep in the forest. A man lay dead, stabbed repeatedly, and beside him, these children. No identification, no sign of who they belonged to. Just silence, then blood. Rhea said she tried to carry them to the highway, but when a car slowed down to help, the driver's eyes didn't look kind. She ran. That's when she ended up at Cole's fence line. Cole listened quietly, his instincts on edge. You said someone might have followed you. Rhea nodded. A man tall, coat down to his boots. He didn't say a word. Just watched. I saw him once, behind the trees. Then again closer. I think he wanted the kids. Cole's jaw tightened. Then we don't let him get near them again. By midnight, the children were sleeping. Rhea was curled on the armchair, and Cole sat by the window, rifle resting across his lap. Outside, something creaked just once. He stood up slowly. The wind, a tree branch, or something more. He stepped onto the porch, eyes scanning the dark. Silence. But then, near the barn, he saw it. A tall shadow moving just beyond the fence. Watching. Still. And then it disappeared. Cole backed into the cabin and locked the door. He stared at the children. The question burned louder now. Who were they? Why were they left to die beside a murdered man? And why was someone willing to chase them into the cold and silence of Montana wilderness? He didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was clear. Whatever storm these children brought with them, it had only just begun. Whatever storm these children brought with them, it had only just begun. Cole didn't sleep that night. He sat rigid by the window, eyes locked on the tree line, his rifle cold against his lap. He'd seen war in his younger years, seen men unravel under pressure. But that shadow, that tall, silent figure watching them, it wasn't just human malice. It was something colder, more determined, the kind of presence that didn't just hunt, it claimed. And it wasn't after money or revenge. It was after the twins. At sunrise, Cole stepped outside. The air was sharp, the frost biting into the porch rails. He scanned the horizon. No movement, no figure, but something had been left behind. Bare footprints in the dirt leading up to the barn and vanishing behind the water trough. Not Rhea's. Not his. The prints were too large, too deep, and they ended abruptly, as if the man had simply vanished into the earth. Cole knelt, ran his hand over the cold soil. A faint impression remained, but no drag marks. No tracks leading away. It didn't make sense. Inside, Rhea stood over the twins, spooning broth into their mouths. Her face was pale, sleep-deprived, but her hands were steady. They need help, she said softly. Real help. Doctors. Police. Cole shook his head. Not yet. If that man's still out there, walking into town would be like leading him right to them. He paused. Or maybe that's what he wants. Rhea looked up, eyes wide. What do you mean? Cole stared at the twins. What if these kids aren't just witnesses? What if they're the reason for all this? Rhea looked horrified. They're babies, Cole. But Cole didn't respond. His instincts were screaming again. He'd seen strange things in the wild, people doing unspeakable things for reasons that made no sense, rituals, symbols, beliefs passed down through whispers and blood. He didn't know what this was yet, but it wasn't just a murder. It was bigger. Later that morning, Cole drove into town alone, under the excuse of grabbing medical supplies. In truth, he needed answers. At the sheriff's office, he asked carefully, any reports of missing children? Murdered campers? But the sheriff, a fat man named Garvey who smelled like chewing tobacco and suspicion, just shook his head. Nothing reported. Not in weeks. You say you saw something. Cole lied. Just tracks. Probably coyotes. He left quickly and stopped by the local library. The building was nearly empty. He spent an hour digging through old newspapers. He didn't know what he was looking for, just something. And then he found it. A clipping from 12 years ago. A cult, broken up in the nearby Blackridge Valley. Accused of child trafficking, ritual abuse. The leader was never caught. But the image attached to the article made Cole's skin crawl. A blurry photo of a man in a long coat, tall, face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Cole didn't need it to be clear. He knew that silhouette. He'd seen it last night. By the time he returned, the cabin was quiet. Too quiet. His stomach dropped as he stepped through the door. "Rhea," he called. No answer. He found her in the back room, sitting on the floor, holding the twins. She was shaking violently. "What happened?" he asked, rushing to her. She looked up, and in her trembling hand, she held a folded note. Cole took it carefully. The handwriting was jagged, almost carved into the paper. "Give them back. You don't understand what they are." His chest tightened. Rhea's lips trembled. "It was under the pillow when I woke up." Cole scanned the room. No broken windows. No signs of forced entry. Whoever left that note had been inside while they slept, inches away from the children, and they hadn't taken them. Why? Because they were sending a message. "We could've. Next time we will." That night, Cole barricaded the doors and windows. He brought the children into his own room and slept with the rifle on his chest. But sleep didn't come. Only dread. In the silence, he thought about the note's words. "You don't understand what they are." What could that possibly mean? They were children. Scared. Innocent. Weren't they? Around 3 a.m., the younger twin, Liam, Rhea had named him, began to cry. Not a normal cry. A low, painful wail that seemed to shake the walls. Cole jolted up and turned on the lamp. Rhea stumbled in, breathless. "What's wrong with him?" she asked. Cole picked the boy up, trying to soothe him. But the moment he touched Liam's skin, his body jolted as if electrocuted. The boy's eyes rolled back, and for a brief second, the cabin lights flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room, and Liam stopped crying. They stood there, in the pitch black, breathing heavily. Then slowly, the lights came back. Rhea looked at Cole, eyes wide with terror. That wasn't normal. Cole didn't answer. He couldn't. Something unspoken had passed between him and that child. Something ancient, raw, and terrifying. He looked at the boy again, now asleep in his arms, face calm, breathing steady. Like nothing had happened. The next morning, Cole made a decision. They couldn't stay here. If whoever was hunting these children could move through locked doors, leave notes under pillows, and watch them from the shadows, then no fence was enough. He'd take them to the one place he swore never to return, the abandoned chapel in Gray Hollow. It had once belonged to his grandfather. Nobody went there anymore. Not even animals. Some said it was cursed. But Cole remembered something different. That old chapel had walls built thick and cold, carved from stone older than the town itself. His grandfather had said, "This place was made to keep evil out, or maybe to keep it in." As he packed the truck, Rhea watched him carefully. "You think we'll be safe there?" He looked at her, and then at the twins, now asleep again. "No, but we'll have a chance." By midday, the truck rumbled down the dirt road, leaving behind the ranch and heading into deeper, darker forest. The twins slept in the back seat. Rhea clutched the knife Cole had given her, and Cole kept one eye on the mirror, not just for the man in the coat, but for the moment those boys opened their eyes and the lights flickered again, because something wasn't right. Something was coming, and it wasn't just human. The road to Gray Hollow wound through the heart of Montana's forgotten wild. Trees stood ancient and hunched like watching figures, and mist clung to the windshield like cold breath. Cole drove in silence, hands gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Rhea sat beside him, clutching Liam, her fingers twitching every time the trees thickened or the engine hummed wrong. In the back seat, the other twin, Noah, slept with his head leaning to the side, calm, too calm for a child who had seen blood and death. The truck groaned as it pulled into the clearing. There it was, the chapel, still standing after decades, its stone walls choked with ivy, the wooden cross above its roof cracked but proud. Cole stepped out, eyes scanning the tree line. No movement, no wind. just a heavy silence that felt alive. "We're here," he said, more to himself than them. They carried the boys inside. The chapel was colder than outside, even with the sun above. The air was thick, old, like it hadn't been breathed in years. Cole laid Noah down on a pew and lit the fireplace in the far wall. Flames fought the cold, but barely held it back. Rhea moved slowly, her eyes darting to the stained glass windows, cracked and grimy with time. "This place gives me chills," she whispered. "It's supposed to," Cole replied. "My grandfather said the ground it stands on was sanctified twice and cursed once. I don't know which one stuck." Hours passed in uneasy quiet. Then, as twilight crept in, the twins began to stir. Cole had stepped outside to gather firewood when he heard it, the crunch of leaves behind him. He spun around, rifle raised. At first, nothing. Then a shape emerged from the trees. Not fast, not loud, just there. A man in a long coat, wide-brimmed hat, face hidden in shadow. "You shouldn't be here," Cole said through gritted teeth. The man didn't speak. He only raised his hand and pointed toward the chapel. Then he took a step back, and without a sound, melted into the trees like smoke. Cole didn't wait. He ran back to the chapel, slammed the door shut, and locked it. "He was here," he said, breathless. "He's coming for them." Rhea's face went pale. She grabbed both boys, holding them close. But something was off. Liam's eyes were wide open and glowing faintly gold in the firelight. Not bright, not blinding, but unnatural. Cole stepped closer. Rhea looked at their eyes. Both boys stared at him, their gaze deep, focused, not like toddlers, but like something far older. "What are they?" Rhea whispered. "I don't know," Cole said. "But I think that man, he knows exactly what they are." Suddenly, a loud thud hit the chapel wall. Then another, and another. The windows trembled. The floor vibrated. Cole grabbed his rifle, eyes locked on the door. "Whatever happens, don't let them go," he said. Rhea nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. Then came the voice, from outside. Cold, hollow, inhuman. "Return what does not belong to you." Cole stepped forward. "Who are you?" he shouted. No answer, only silence. Then the door burst open, but not from force, from something else. The wood didn't break. It folded in, like giving up, like surrendering. And there he was, the man, but now closer, clearer. His face was pale, hollow-cheeked, eyes black as night, lips cracked but smiling. "You don't understand," he said softly. "They were never meant to survive." Cole raised his rifle. "Take one more step," but the man didn't flinch. "You think you're protecting them, but they are not yours to protect. They were born of sacrifice, born of a deal sealed in blood long before you were ever carved from dust." Rhea stood, both boys in her arms. "You're lying." The man looked at her with something like pity. "Am I?" "Ask them." Cole glanced back. Liam and Noah were calm, too calm, their eyes now fully golden. Then Noah lifted his small hand and pointed at the man, and spoke. He heard our mother. It was the first time either child had spoken. Their voice, singular, unified, as if both were one. Cole's heart nearly stopped. The man's smile faded. They weren't supposed to remember. Suddenly, the fireplace roared. Flames shot higher, licking the ceiling. The stained glass windows cracked from heat and pressure. The boys began to glow, not with fire, but with something deeper. Light that came from within. The chapel shook. The man backed away, now truly afraid. "They chose a vessel," he said, eyes wide. "They weren't supposed to choose." Cole stepped between the man and the twins. "Whatever they are, they're not yours anymore." The man hissed. "You fool, they are not children. They are judgment." And then, in a blinding flash of gold, the chapel exploded with sound, not noise, but truth. A roar of memories, screams, centuries of pain and betrayal. Cole dropped to his knees. Rhea collapsed behind him. The man screamed, covering his face as the light consumed him. And then silence. When Cole opened his eyes, the man was gone. Nothing remained, not even ashes. The chapel was still. The fire had died. Rhea gasped, holding the twins, who now looked normal. No glow, no gold, just two exhausted boys, curled against her chest, breathing softly. Cole stood slowly. What happened? Rhea shook her head. I don't know, but I think they saved us. Outside, the sky had cleared. Stars blinked into life above the black forest. The curse had passed. For now. Cole sat on the chapel steps, rifle beside him, watching the wind move through the trees. Rhea laid the boys on a blanket inside and came out quietly. Where do we go from here? She asked. He looked up at her, the weight of everything behind his eyes. We raise them, he said. We protect them. And when the time comes, we teach them what they are. She nodded, her face unreadable. As dawn painted the horizon, Liam stirred. He opened his eyes and looked at Cole. Thank you, he whispered. And for the first time in years, Cole felt something crack open in his chest. Not fear, not pain, hope. Over the next few days, the chapel became more than shelter. It became a place of healing. The twins, Liam and Noah, slowly began to act like children again. They laughed, they played, they cried. But underneath their innocence, something still flickered. A quiet knowing, a sense of burden that no toddler should carry. Cole could feel it in their silence, in the way they held each other when the nights grew cold. They remembered more than they ever should. But they were no longer alone. Cole repaired the chapel by hand, board by board, window by window, turning it into a home. Rhea stayed close, always within reach of the boys, no longer just a drifter, but something more, something like a mother. There were no more visits from the man in the coat, no more voices. The forest remained still. Whatever power had followed the boys had either been destroyed or had chosen to retreat. But in Cole's heart, he knew this peace was temporary. The world didn't let things like them go so easily. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and painted the trees gold, Liam approached Cole on the porch. His small hands clutched a folded piece of paper. I drew something, he said softly. Cole unfolded it. Crayons, shaky lines, but the image was clear. A tall man in a dark coat, standing before a burning church, and four figures walking away together. Cole, Rhea, Liam, and Noah. Cole knelt beside him. Why did you draw this? Liam looked into his eyes. Because it's the truth. We're safe now, but we won't always be. One day, someone else will come. Someone worse. And when they do, we'll remember. Cole placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we'll be ready. Together. That night, as the stars blinked into view and wind rustled the chapel's repaired roof, Cole sat by the fire with Rhea beside him and the boys asleep between them. He stared into the flames, thinking of the man who came with darkness, of the strange golden light, and of a promise unspoken, that the past may not be done with them, but the future was theirs to build. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was thinking about what he'd found. A purpose, a family, and maybe redemption. Because sometimes, what's found in a sack isn't horror. It's hope in its rawest, most broken form, wrapped in mystery, born from blood, and crying to be held by someone strong enough not to look away. And Cole Braddock never looked away again.